The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and wants has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort, as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations. Whereas the people of United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. Whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve, in cooperation with the United Nations, the promotion of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Whereas a common understanding of these rights and freedoms is of greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge. Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance both among the peoples of member states themselves and among the peoples of territories under their jurisdictions. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is a right that's been granted to a human being. It is essential, and it states, for a man, if he has no recourse, there's no recourse available to him within the foundations of what they are calling justice, within the foundations of what they are calling government, within the foundation of what they are calling a ruling authority, as a last resort, to rebel, lawful rebellion against tyranny and oppression of the human being. So you have a right that's been granted to you to take a state of lawful rebellion against the tyranny that the government is creating upon men and women in this country. Social Aid Act here in Quebec. This statute is repealed or spent since 1989-0801. This statute is replaced by RSQ CS3-11. Article 1. In this Act and in the regulations, unless the context indicates a different meaning, the following expressions and words mean: social aid. Social aid, any benefit granted under this Act. Article 5. Needs. The needs of a family or individual are either ordinary or special. Ordinary needs. Ordinary needs are food, clothing, household and personal requirements, and any other costs relating to the habitation of a house or lodging. All other needs are special needs. Article 6. Purpose of aid. Social aid shall meet the ordinary and special needs of any family or individual lacking means of subsistence. Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Article 25. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Everyone has the right to this standard of living. Everyone. The preamble of the Act. Whereas, according to the principles set out by the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, respect for dignity of human beings, equality of women and men, and recognition of their rights and freedoms constitute the foundation of justice, liberty, and peace. Whereas poverty and social exclusion may constitute obstacles to the protection and the respect of human dignity. Whereas the effects of poverty and social exclusion impede the economic and social development of Quebec society as a whole and threaten its cohesion and equilibrium. Whereas the fight against poverty and social exclusion is a national imperative, that means obligation, within the spirit of a universal movement which seeks to enhance the social, culture, and economic development of all human beings. Object and definition. The object of this Act is to guide the government and Quebec society as a whole towards a process of planning and implementing actions to combat poverty, prevent its causes, reduce its effects on individuals and families, and counter social exclusion, and strive towards a poverty-free Quebec. A poverty-free Quebec. So it's stated in their own act that their social aid acts and all of Quebec's other acts and regulations concerning social aid, that the goal and the objection of these acts are to strive and work towards a poverty-free Quebec. That's the goal of these enactments. That's the goal of these regulations. However, the truth of the matter is, these acts and these regulations, they are placing people into poverty. They are making people suffer, and they are stripping them of their human rights, and they are rendering them legal persons with limited rights attached to them. So this was a very noble idea. This was a very noble gesture, and the fact that we find it in the law is really great, that men who started the law back then were seeking to do something right for human beings. However, there are those who are in position of power nowadays who do not have the same motivation within inside of themselves. Because when you look to the condition of Quebec, and when you look to the condition of the social systems, they are sad. It is a sad situation. And it need not be that way, and no one can come before me and argue with me that it has to be that way, because when you look where the money is going in Quebec, and when you look where the interests are in Quebec, it is all for corporate interest primarily, when it should be for this. Do you not see that in the past 30 and 40 years, where your interests have changed from humans to corporations, what you have created in your society, what Canada has become, what Quebec has become, where we are suffering, where there is poverty, where people are suffering? That's not because it should be like that. That's because your focus and your intentions in the government are wrong, and your deeds are creating this. And people are suffering because your interests are misplaced. It's not the laws that are wrong. It's not the laws that are trying to hurt the people. It's the ones who are operating behind the laws, who are not focused properly. And not all of them, but those in the positions of power. So in Quebec, in their Social Aid Act, their law that they created, there was an expression, as you saw, of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights and Freedoms. And they titled it under ordinary needs. And they said that every human or every individual is entitled to food, clothing, housing, and all costs relating to housing. So electricity, water, plumbing, stuff like that. So ask yourself a question. Then why is the government taxing you for an infrastructure, for an aqueduct system on your homes? If under the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, you as a human being were granted the right to have anything and all costs or anything associated with your house, meaning food, clothing, water, electricity, provided for you for free. Yet they charge you here for water in Canada. So as you see, the ones who were in positions of so-called authority and power here in Quebec, they were aware and they know, and there are laws concerning your human rights. Your human rights. Now there may be some capitalists that are watching my video who do not approve of what I'm saying because they're millionaires, or perhaps they like the capitalist system and they can't accept the fact that because they are human beings and because they are men and women, that they have intrinsic rights. Well, deal with it on your own time. Go and understand that you are indeed a human being, and as such you are entitled to certain rights and certain obligations because you are a human being. Just like other people who are in positions in corporations are entitled certain respects and certain attributes or certain bonuses, whatever you want to say, their position entitles them to those things. Well, you being a human being entitles you to what I'm declaring, or to what has been declared in the law. If you don't like it because you love capitalism, then, well, too bad for you. But concerning your human rights, Quebec knows about your rights. And they remove these rights through your legal person. Because this way, the obligation to fulfill your human rights is not upon them anymore. And as I state, and I will state again, that look at the condition of the society out there, the suffering that's going on. This is only because your rights as a human being is not being fulfilled. And it's because first and foremost, we're not taught that we have these rights, that they're intrinsic to us, that they belong to us, and no one has the right to remove them from us. And if a government has removed them from us through their laws and regulations, you have every right to throw up your hands in the air in a lawful rebellion and say, no, I'm not submitting to you, I'm not submitting to your authority, and I'm not submitting to your rules until you fix this situation for me personally in my life, and then my family's life, and the next person's life. But that's your given right as a human being. Enough is enough. Occupy is not going to make a difference. Standing up is not going to make a difference. This has to be done on an individual level. You have to understand who you are under law. You have to understand what you have attached to you under law. I know sometimes it's hard to accept, again, because of capitalism and what is taught us, but you've got to throw that understanding, and you have to see everyone is equal. Yeah, you may be a millionaire. Yeah, you may be have $10 million in your bank. Does that make you any different because you have more things and you can buy more things? If you cut, you bleed. If you have no food, you starve. If you get sick, you die. We are all the same. We are all equal. And until you get that inside of here and inside of here, capitalism will always rule you. But we have all these rights. Throw up your hands and rebel in an unlawful way. Throw up your hands and go against the society or go against the structure of the government that they've created, which they know they've created, that doesn't fulfill the fundamental rights of a human being. You're asking for trouble. But there is a right and a lawful way to rebel against this whole situation that's going on against human beings. I guess if you've never read the Canadian Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, then you won't understand exactly what's going on in the finances of Canada. But after you read that and realize what's going on, you're going to see that they're sitting on hundreds of trillions of dollars. And you're telling me that there's no way to fulfill the human rights and the human needs? there has to be a line drawn. A line drawn for every individual, every family, every member of this so-called society. Now, first it starts with, is the government going to be a government for the people? Is the government going to be here in Quebec a government that fulfills and works for the people? Or is the government going to be for the interest of a few? Capitalism and corporations and enriching the few. If the government chooses to build itself and to stay a government for the few, then the people have to come out of this government, because it will never be what it needs to be to help the people. And that's where lawful rebellion comes in. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it is something that will happen once people wake up and understand who they are and really what they are in this life. Human beings, men and women, with rights and obligations that these in power have towards you. The government wants to change and stop working and denying people their rights and hiding things in the law and declaring them legal persons and messing around with the rights that are attached to human beings, then what a wonderful society that could be built. As it stands, it doesn't seem like that's the situation. So what else can you do? You're not going to sit down on their property and as you've tried and occupy their property, they're going to kick you off. They're going to use their laws against you, they're going to hurt you, and they're going to damage you, and they're going to cause you loss. Your only option is to stand up for what you really are, and that is a human being, that is a man and woman. And by doing so, you declare a very different standing within society, within the universe. Because whether you want to accept it or not, right now you are recognized as, especially here in Quebec, as a legal person performing civil duties under an assigned name. The name that your mother and father gave to you, they took it and they reassigned it back to your legal person. Funny, huh? That's a gifted name from your family. It comes from generations ago. It belongs to you and your family, in your bloodline. Yet the government seized that name and they assigned it back to your legal person. So when you say your own name in this province here, what you're actually describing is an assigned name to a legal person who's performing civil duties. Get that in your head. You don't even think about that when you walk on the street and you pronounce your name and you say your name, my name is blah blah blah, or someone asks your name, my name is blah blah blah. What you're actually declaring by saying those words is that I am a legal person and this name has been assigned to me and I am performing obligations as a legal person. Now when I say we in the Free Men movement, we say whatever your name is, Mike, John, Mary, or whatever of the family, and then state your last name. That's a gifted name that belongs to you. It's not assigned to you. There's a big difference there. But a lot of people don't realize that. That's why in my Understanding the Person I showed you the difference in how they write your name. And all capitalized letter. That's your legal person. That's who's performing the civil duties here in Quebec. And you're not free. And that person does not have the human rights attached to it. It has no obligation to be given food. It has no obligation to be taken care of. It has no obligation. None at all. If they're sitting on 100 trillions of dollars because it's profit from diamonds and gold and resources extracted from Canada, you were born here. This is your land. Put your feet on the ground. That's where you stand. This is your land. A part of what they're taking out of the ground belongs to you. There may be a little percentage part, but you know what? That's millions and millions of dollars, and that belongs to you. And you hold your security in your hand through your act of birth. But yet they've placed a registered holder over you, a constructed registered holder, who is a fiduciary, because you're, like the Free Men people say, you're considered a child, that you can't take care of yourself. Well, would you not consider yourself a child up to this point? Being honestly, did you even know what's going on about the legal person? Did you even know that your human being had all these rights? Did you know that you were stripped of all these rights? Did you know when you pronounce your name, that's what you're declaring? No. So in a way, they can still say, well, you're a child. You know, you have no right to be operating in this way. Really, they can't, but that's what they're claiming. And if you walked into a court of law, you'd be lost. You wouldn't know what to say because of the fact of all these things that they've done. But hopefully you're waking up slowly to what's going on, and you're going to be able to exercise your rights as a human. And your life is going to change here in Canada, because the 1% against the 99, or the 10% against the 90% shouldn't be like that. And the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration, fights against that and says that's not what it should be. And our charters here in Canada fights against that and says that's not what it should be. I'm not against profit. I'm not against people working hard. What I talk about is your needs. It's not about your wants. You want a Ferrari, you want a Porsche, you want a mansion, go and work hard. If you're healthy, use your energy and go and do that. But if you need basic needs, housing, clothing, food, water, education, medical care, those are your rights as a human being. And the fact that any government agent has stripped you of those rights, you have every right to rebel. You have every right to demand what is lawfully yours. I see people on welfare, and they claim that welfare is a system that is created to support the family or the individual, and what they receive from the government doesn't support them at all. It places them in poverty. It makes them a horrible situation. Now, yes, people are going to say, oh well, there's people on welfare who are drug addicts and they're drunkards, and yeah, for sure, they're having trouble in their life. That doesn't mean that they're not entitled to have their basic human needs met, because they're suffering from addictions, because they're suffering from some power that's overpowering them, that's making them take actions that are detrimental to their own selves. So then you're going to be a wise man and sit there and pronounce judgment upon them and say they're not worthy enough to receive human dignity. They're not worthy enough to receive what a human is entitled to: food, clothing, housing, Hydro-Quebec to keep warm in the wintertime. Because of what? Because they have an addiction? Come on. If that's your case, you know what? I wouldn't want you part of my society. Get on out of here. Go live with the capitalists. Go live with those who have created these systems beating up on people. I wouldn't even give you my time of day. If you have a heart like that, there's so many other people who have a heart to help people. There's so many other people that want change, that are tired of this system, that we don't have time to argue with nuts like you, because that's really what you are. To think that, you can let someone suffer, and all the more that they're downtrodden because they're addicted to something. Oh well, that's your fault then, suffer even more. That almost reminds me of like a Hitler's attitude. I know there's smart people in the government. I know there's people in the government that understand all this and they are against all this. What is it? Fear that they don't speak up, that we can't change the system? I don't have any illusion that the system's going to change. I don't truly believe it, but I believe that if enough people can get enough knowledge inside themselves, then they can go into this system and go before the courts and fight for their rights and acquire their rights and have a change of lifestyle and not be stuck in poverty and not be stuck striving so much in this capitalist society, because it doesn't need to be so. I'm also to blame. I say the government and all that's going on because it's truth, but I'm also to blame. Before I understood, before I took my steps in order to understand and to grow and to search and to research, I was accountable. I could go to a movie theater, sit there and watch murder on a screen. I watch a human being's neck being cut off and 25 bullets, pa 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 pa, you're dead. Oh, I'm dead. And not think twice of it. And not realize that, you know what, apart from Hollywood, I would never see these actions in real life. I wouldn't see men be murdered in front of me, and if I did, it would be very traumatic. I'd be like, wow, this is like really horrible situation, and it would cause me to want to help, and would cause me, for love and sadness to kick in, and, compassion and empathy towards that person who's dying and suffering. But now you sit before a Hollywood screen and you watch it happen hundreds and thousands of times, and you're deadened inside. You don't even care. Oh, wow, did you see him shoot his head off? Oh, his head blew off. Oh, that's so cool, man. That's disgusting. That's a human life being portrayed as being destroyed. Oh, well, it's just entertainment, it doesn't really matter. No, it does really matter. That's a portrayal of death. That's a portrayal of destruction of a human life. And once it's gone, it's over with. It's not coming back. And by watching that garbage, you're hardening your heart. So that when you do see people suffer on the street, you look at them and you pass your way, man. You have no more empathy left inside of you. Your spirit is empty. You have no more compassion left inside of you. You can go your way and, oh, me, myself, and I, screw everybody else. Where do you think that's coming from? We weren't born like that. None of us were born as little children and said, oh, well, I'm grow up, I'm going to be a selfish, egotistic type of person, and all I'm going to care about is myself. And when I see those around me suffering, I don't care anymore. Something's dead in our hearts. Something's dead in our feelings inside. What has changed in the past 60, 80 years? What has changed in lifestyle and society and in general? What's the biggest thing? What do we put in front of our eyes every day? What do we watch in front of our eyes every day? Lust and sexual things and violence and murder. Come on. What more can you say? That's where that old saying goes on, that old expression comes from, where it says, one person, one man, one woman can make a difference. You may not be able to make a difference for the whole world, but you have your own world that you live in, and the people that you see and the ones who are struggling, and your own personal life that you're struggling because of your classification as a legal person and you being stripped of your human rights, you, one person, can make a change. And that change can have a stemming effect towards other people, towards other family members. But it starts with you wanting to say, I'm making a change for myself in my world. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to represent this. I don't want to stand for this. And again, you have every right. The Universal Charter of Declaration for Human Rights and Freedom says that if you are under oppression, if you are under tyranny, and you can see it and describe it, you need to do it legally, lawfully, through their works. As you see here, you have every right, again, to throw up your hands and say, no, that's it. I'm done with it. I'm finished with this. I don't stand for what you're doing to the people. I don't support what you're doing for the people. Therefore, don't make any demands on me, because you have no right to me anymore. I am lawfully in rebellion against you until you fix this situation in my life personally, and then I start to see you fix this situation in the other people's lives. And if you don't, well, I remain in this lawful rebellion. Canada.